The sale of Manchester United has hit a crossroads. As with every sale, it comes down to money and who's willing to pay it. So far, we know of two public parties who are bidding for the club: Sheikh Yassim bin Hamad Al Thani and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. First though, to get a full understanding of how we got to this point, we need to go back to last November. On November 22nd, Manchester United released a statement saying it would explore strategic alternatives for the club, such as a sale, investment or other transactions. They also announced that the Rain Group would broker the deal, the same bank that handled the Chelsea sale in 2022. They set a deadline for interested parties to prove their interest in a deal, with opening bids needing to be submitted before 10 p.m. on February 17th. Sir Jim Ratcliffe submitted his on January 17th, a full month before the deadline, while Sheikh Yassim waited until the final day to submit his. The following day, Elliott Management made a financing proposal to the Glazers, which would allow them to carry out renovation work and yet maintain ownership of the club, although it would mean the club's controversial debt growing once again. March saw representatives for both parties meeting with club officials and being toured around Old Trafford before having further meetings and scrutinising the finances. They then had a 10-day window to submit new revised bids, with both doing so around the £5.2 billion mark. That all brings us to where we are today, with still no preferred bidder named and signs of a process that will drag on, impacting summer transfer plans both for those coming and going. A process that was meant to be completed this month has no definite end in sight, leaving agents, recruitment staff and even the manager annoyed. While the commercial success of the Glazer ownership is undeniable, there remains two significant areas of concern for any potential bidders. Off the pitch, the debt of £600 million racked up initially by the Glazer leverage buyout is a burden on the club's future progress. However, due to the wealth of both parties, thanks to their successes in the oil industry, this debt will be cleared. As for the pitch itself, there is also the potential £1 billion cost of renovating or indeed rebuilding Old Trafford. In recent years, Old Trafford has decayed, much like the standards of the team that calls it home. And the long-awaited expansion of the South Stand over the railway line has still not been carried out. While the extortionate cost of this expansion is perhaps too much for a departing owner to pay, it is not the only area with room for improvement in the stadium. From a roof that has sprung many leaks to an exterior that is beginning to show its age, there is no denying the biggest stadium in English club football needs a facelift. The outside of the stadium is not the only place that needs work. Cramped seating, substandard concourses, and reports of rats around food kiosks are all signposts that the Glazers' neglect of Old Trafford will cost the new owners sooner rather than later. It's difficult for Manchester United fans to watch their own stadium fall into ruin when they see fellow Premier League teams such as Tottenham and Arsenal move into new state-of-the-art stadiums, Liverpool building a brand new main stand, and their neighbours Manchester City expand the Etihad's South Stand. While the last expansion of Old Trafford, the adding of second tiers to the northern quadrants, was completed after their takeover, it had been approved and paid for beforehand. To knock and rebuild Old Trafford would mean the erasure of over 100 years of history. Some of the club's greatest moments took place on that very patch of grass, and to tear it all up is a step too far for some fans. A lot of Manchester United fans have memories of going to that stadium for the first time with their parents or grandparents. Many years later, they are now going back with their own kids or grandchildren. Some have been sat in the same seat for decades, and no matter what success comes in a new stadium, they would never quite feel at home. Investment is also needed at the club's training grounds in Carrington, which have fallen behind the standards set by many other Premier League clubs. For example, Manchester City opened the Etihad campus, which is just a stone's throw away from their own stadium. It comprises of pitches, gyms and a larger indoor training area, along with a mini stadium for the club's youth and women's teams, something United doesn't have. The Glazers cannot argue that the recent increase in the club's net debt is down to the pandemic. It has been on an upward curve since 2018, peaking at £627 million. Even without the club's transfer payments, it is still clear to see that the day-to-day operation of the club has caused the debt to rise. The cause of this debt was of course the Glazer takeover, the late Malcolm Glazer needing to borrow nearly £600 million to complete the leverage buyout. It is now the next generation which will reap the rewards of the club's success, although they will not receive 100% of the value of the club. The Glazer siblings own just over 68% of the club, with the other 32% being owned by investment groups and public shares. If the Glazers do accept the rumoured £5.2 billion enterprise value of the club, that means in total the six of them would receive £3.5 billion. That would mean Joel Glazer would receive nearly as much as his father paid for the entire club back in 2005. All of them would receive more than what Malcolm Glazer personally invested in the club at least twice over. There is of course one more option, which is to take up Elliott Management's financing offer that would allow the Glazers to retain ownership of the club and give them the capital needed to invest in the club's facilities, such as renovating Old Trafford and improving the training ground. One counterpoint to this is the apparent split between the siblings. Although Joel and Avram would be open to this move, Brian, Kevin, Darcy and Edward have all effectively wiped their hands of the day-to-day running of the club. It has been years since any of them have gone to Old Trafford. So, what's next? Well, as much as we would love to be able to unveil the new owner of Manchester United in this video, it's simply too early in the process to give a definitive answer. While Rain have begun discussions with the Glazers on naming a preferred bidder, the Glazers feel another round of bidding may extract the last few pounds out of any interested parties. On the Qatari side, that would mean more meetings with the likes of Fadi Bakos, senior personal advisor to Sheikh Yassim, and Shahzad Shabazz, president of the newly founded 9-2 Foundation, set up by Sheikh Yassim specifically to deal with this potential takeover. It is worth keeping in mind that these negotiations would not be the responsibility of Richard Arnold, who is still tasked with the day-to-day running of the club. Instead, it is Rain who would report back and forth between the Glazers and any bidding parties to come to an agreed price. For all the latest updates on the sale of Manchester United, follow our Twitter @Muppeteers, and please like this video and subscribe to the channel for updates behind the scenes at the club.